comments on the presentation. Next up, we have Rasha Mahmoud Gaber, a doctoral research candidate from the Faculty of Engineering, Cairo University, located in Giza, Egypt. The title of the thesis is Assessment of Urban Resilience and Disaster Risk Reduction at Egypt, guided by Professor Mohammed Hussein Abdel Khader and Professor Ihab Mahmoud Okba under the theme Urban Management. I request you to take over and start the presentation, Rasha.
Okay, good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, I will share my screen now.
Yeah, are you able to project your screen?
Yes, it's just being prepared for loading. Just
okay.
A few seconds. Okay, is the screen visible now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Rasha Mahmoud Gaber. I will be presenting a PhD thesis titled Assessment of Urban Resilience and Disaster Risk Reduction. The thesis was submitted to Faculty of Engineering, Cairo University, Egypt. Starting with the background of the work and its motivation, recent United Nations reports have indicated that more than 50% of the current world population are currently living in cities, a percentage which is expected to further increase to 70% by 2050, in a phenomenon often referred to as the urban turn. This is due to the fact that cities are centers of economic growth, opportunities, and innovation. However, cities are also places where accumulated stresses and sudden shocks may occur. That is, unless a city is resilient. The main research problem is that despite the growing number of programs and action plans to impose resilient strategies on urban planning, there has not been a reliable and officially recognized assessment tool for urban resilience that comprehensively assesses the urban resilience of cities against natural disasters and man-induced hazards as well. This has created a sort of confusion among practitioners and planners over the choice of appropriate tools of evaluation. Accordingly, the main objective of the study is to transform resilience from a theoretical concept to more applicable action plans and strategies through redefining resilience so that it accounts for both natural and man-induced hazards, and introducing a standardized assessment tool for evaluation of urban resilience. Therefore, the study proposes the Resilience Performance Index through defining its conceptual framework, proposing the relevant indicators for assessing resilience, and then designing a resilience assessment model using the fuzzy logic approach, which is a artificial intelligence tool, and therefore combining resilience analysis with dynamic modeling techniques. The study follows a methodology that addresses urban resilience through defining the main resilience-related concepts, the qualities of resilient systems, and the common resilience strategies, as well as the types of hazards. Also, the study goes through the existing frameworks and the resilience indicators and the vulnerability assessments used to construct the Resilience Performance Index. Throughout the theoretical study, urban resilience has been defined as the ability of cities, urban settlements to adapt, resist, and transform, and even bounce back better to continue functioning effectively despite sudden shocks and chronic stresses. Resilience is divided into 4 main domains, which are the natural and environmental dimension, the socio-economic dimension, the physical and built environment dimension, and the governance dimension, which are integrated to achieve the 7 qualities of resilient systems. The concepts related to resilience that are discussed through the study are the hazards, risk, vulnerability, and exposure, and they are defined in detail throughout the study, and the relationship and interaction has been clarified. Another point is the common strategies for resilience, which have varying characteristics and varying levels. For example, the coping strategies usually deal with small or individual scales. The adapting strategies are more concerned with the community or local government scale, and the transformation strategies, on the other hand, are more national oriented. To demonstrate the evaluation process of urban resilience, a number of existing assessment frameworks have been analyzed to determine their main themes, indicators, and assessment formats and data types. Among the analyzed assessment frameworks are the City Resilience Framework, the City Disaster Resilience Scorecard, the Resilience Capacity Index, the Community Advancing Resilience Toolkit, and the Climate Disaster Resilience Index. As a result of this analysis, it has been concluded that all the assessment frameworks follow one of the 2 types of approaches, or sometimes a combination of both. Formative assessment, which involves the early stages of planning, and summative assessment, which is more result-oriented. And that assessment is being done through one of the formats, either scorecards, models, indices, and toolkits. And of course, the data types are either primary data through surveys and field interviews, or secondary data provided by statistical reports, historical records, or research-based data. However, despite the growing number of frameworks, the practical application is very limited. This is due to the complexity of the assessment process, given the interdisciplinary nature of resilience and the need for large funds and expert skills. So to further examine the process of resilience assessment, a number of adapted applications of the previous frameworks have been analyzed, and some case studies have been chosen. The selection criteria for this case studies is that the spatial scale of the assessment is national or city scale, and that they cover the 4 basic dimensions of resilience and address multiple hazards. One of the case studies also assesses urban resilience against the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, of course, due to the arising global crisis. Also, the selected applications demonstrate a quantitative assessment of resilience, showing the basic steps of indicator selection, index construction, and computation methods. In conclusion of this analysis, the constructing steps for the assessment index were deducted, and they are simply setting a conceptual framework and identifying the scale of analysis, and of course, determination of the relevant indicators, and also the accuracy, transformation, and normalization processes of data. Also, it is advised to assign different weights for each indicator upon the significance and its effect on the final final score of resilience, and also the aggregation and computation methods. So in the applied section of the study, the steps for designing the proposed resilience performance index are illustrated. The first step was designing the conceptual framework of the assessment, which takes into consideration the natural hazards as well as the managed use hazards, and also addresses the contextual state of the area under study, and also a flow chart for the main processes of the assessment process were developed. The set of sequential steps, such as the current scenario modeling, the risk analysis, the damage impact analysis, and a comparison between the vulnerability and the resilience capacity of the area under study, so as to determine the state of the resilience performance. Also, the relevant indicators were classified into the 4 main dimensions of resilience, and further classified into sub-dimensions and respective metrics and indicators. Okay, so after this step, the problem was dealing with the resilience data. So in this area, the study presented a tool for modeling of resilience indicators using an artificial intelligence tool called fuzzy logic. The integration of AI was proposed to address the complexity of the assessment of urban data in general and resilience data in particular, given the because it's a fuzzy multidisciplinary concept that does not involve distinctive values that can be processed using normal Boolean mathematical methods, but are rather dependent on expert perceptions and human reasoning. Fuzzy logic systems are designed to deal with such sets of data which are somehow imprecise or vague, and therefore require sophisticated and complicated statistical and mathematical formula. So designing a fuzzy logic model involves the preparation of resilience data and the transformation of these data into indicator input values, and then the classification of these values into overlapping sets of data that indicate poor and moderate and acceptable levels of resilience performance. These overlapping sets of data are referred to in fuzzy logic software as membership functions. Another major step in the fuzzy logic system is linking the individual indicators to the final score for resilience performance through a number of if-then rules, which is called the rule base. And the last step in the okay, the last step of the model is the processing of these data into a resilience performance score. To validate the model, New Damietta city was chosen due to its location in the Mediterranean coast and in the Nile Delta region, which is a highly vulnerable area to the impacts of sea level rise. And to test the vulnerability of this area, a coastal vulnerability index was employed, which indicated a very high level of coastal vulnerability. And also the damage impact assessment of the city was undergone using GIS maps and digital elevation model. And finally, the input values for the city indicators were collected and introduced into the model and processed so that to determine the final score of resilience performance for the city, which indicated a moderate level of resilience. In conclusion, the study has concluded that the current practices of resilience assessment have not yet developed into a unified assessment approach, neither scientifically nor practically, and that the attempts to assess resilience are not generalized due to the fuzzy nature of resilience, and that the assessment requires extensive research. And this is where the fuzzy logic tool comes in, since it is a flexible, user-friendly, easily applicable tool that can be employed across different contexts, allowing for regular periodic resilience assessment and comparative spatial or temporal analysis. And also, the study recommends some resilience strategies, such as ecosystem management, emergency response strategies, and resilience-oriented land use planning, and also the prioritizing of risk mapping and resilience fund allocation and resilience research and innovation, and of course, the suitable execution and monitoring methods. For future research, the study proposes the in-depth addressing of resilience throughout the multiple levels of urban resilience, and also the incorporation of city information modeling in developing simulation methods for the impacts of potential hazards on urban settlements, and also examining the potential role of the emerging smart technologies such as artificial intelligence, big data tools, and the trending interneting of things in enhancing resilience performance through facilitating the accessibility and archiving of data, conveying emergency plans, and raising the resiliency awareness of the community. Thank you for your attention and for granting me the opportunity to share my work.
Thank you for that presentation. I believe that the concept of resilience in an urban setting has become a crucial parameter, more so after the global pandemic. I'll hand it over to panelists for their comments without further ado. Can we hear from Architect Nicolo?
Yeah, so thanks for the presentation. I will just be brief because then the whole structure seemed to be really clear. I mean, I only share a doubt on the parameter. I mean, it's more a suggestion maybe on the parameters you actually want to include in this type of assessment. Because I think like when dealing with urban resilience and sustainability, maybe relying on a quantitative and prescriptive approach, maybe it's not really the solution. So maybe the approach would be better to be on a qualitative approach. I mean, you can see all the SDGs, which are more targeted on goals rather than, I mean, a prescriptive approach, like do this, stay in these parameters. So maybe the qualitative perspective should be really relevant in this type of work. And the other maybe suggestion is to be careful not to think too much as a mathematical modeler, but to try to stay in the field of urban design, of urban planning, because at the end of the day, the tool, I think it's intended to be for architects, urban designers, landscape architects. So even the people that are going to read it should actually be on the same track. And of course, to try to model this approach on assessing urban resilience and sustainability to be site sensitive. So not to be too much general, but to be, I mean, you need to put some boundaries. And the only question I have is in what phase of a possible project you actually think someone could use this tool? So at the beginning, at the end, throughout all the process. So just to understand how we can actually use it in the end. And thanks again for the presentation.
Okay, regarding the parameters for the urban resilience, I have elaborated on them and the rationale upon which each indicator was selected or parameter was selected and their links with the improving the performance of resilience in cities. So maybe in the presentation, due to the short time, I had no opportunity to showcase this part, but in the thesis, it's elaborately illustrated. As for the mathematical part of the project, well, it's actually the point that I was trying to avoid, because that's what I faced when I studied most case studies, is that we are now shifting after you've set the indicators and you already stated what you want to measure, and then it's suddenly transformed into a statistical analysis. So what I was trying to present was a user-friendly tool that can be used by governments and local governments to assess the resilience of the city on a periodic basis on any scale of on any phase of the process. It can improve the periodic assessment, which is the main notion of resilience. It's also we're living in a fast-changing world, so we need periodic assessment. The previous assessment tools required too much research and too much intensive calculation, statistical records, and so on. So I believe this tool is much user-friendly for planners and for even governments to use.
I think that it's really relevant just to be sure, like that both sides speaks the same language, because otherwise you cannot really use a tool which is in another, I mean, language, not in terms of English, Spanish, but like the language of the work. And yes. Thanks again.
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we hear from Dr. Manoj?
Yes, Rasha, very interesting topic and very relevant too. But for me, I felt the whole presentation as a synopsis than a thesis. Basically because, I mean, can you just take up the last slide, the conclusion slide? Here, I mean, what you have written is that's a third point here is the current practices of resilience assessment have not yet developed into a unified, most appropriate assessment approach. And only, I mean, it neither scientifically nor practically, and many of the existing methods are conceptual or theoretical. And all discussions that we had today is mostly conceptual and theoretical, and I would like to know how you have put in the concepts as adapted applications.
There's throughout the thesis there is a chapter for the implementation of the or the adaptation of the existing frameworks, and I've studied tons of literature, and all I have reached is that the practical application of these frameworks is relatively very limited, and even if it's done, it's more a contextual, and it's not applicable or flexible to be used elsewhere. So the point with the proposed tool is that it's more flexible, and the indicators could be managed, and you can remove indicators or you can add indicators. You can change the weight of different indicators according to their significance on the actual context of the study. So it might facilitate more periodic assessments, and it does not require so much mathematical and statistical calculations and descriptive formula.
Okay, that's all my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we hear from Dr. Nabil next?
Yes, thanks. Hi, Rasha. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's really interesting. And actually, we needed to change, or I can say for myself, I needed to change my mindset because all the previous projects were for undergraduate students. So this is a postgraduate. So that's why we suddenly needed to change our mindset. But it's really interesting, and the topic itself. And thank you for this. I would like to ask first, at what stage in your PhD you are now? Is it in the building the framework or testing your model, or you have finalized your Viva?
Yes, I finalized my work and I submitted my thesis last January.
So congratulations. Right now you're Dr. Rasha, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's good. So we're discussing something which is finished actually, not in the progress issue. Well, actually, it's really challenging to summarize the PhD, what we have done in a number of years in just few slides and try to present them. I know it's really challenging, and you have done a very good task. Well, that's why maybe in the future you might focus on either the model and show how the model works. Maybe this might be your focus because it's finalized, or you might just convince others that this is the best model compared to other models. So you might have some sort of a comparative, like others are doing this and I've come up with a new model, and please look at my model and how it's working. Yes, it has some limitations, but it's working better than others. So how you orient your presentation, it's really from now on, it depends on you and depends on the context and depends on how you'd like others to perceive your work. Because I believe that you have done a lot of work, a lot of investigation, a lot of literature review, a lot of comparative analysis, but you need to decide which angle you're going to present your work. Just the findings, just the case studies, the model, only the literature review, or what? Because if you're going to try to summarize everything, it might not be clear to the audience, your audience. But I'm not saying anything that might disappoint you.